Yesterday, Microsoft had an AI event, and I think it was a pretty important event. I would say it's one of those pivotal moments that we will remember. It reminds me of when I went to an NVIDIA conference years ago, and they presented AI as a concept that could be beneficial to them as a company, but of course also beneficial to the rest of the world, and they were right about it. And interestingly enough, they used Andrej Karpathy back then, Jensen Huang. He used Andrej Karpathy's ability to generate prompts under an image. That was, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. That was a big deal. And, Karpathy was sort of featured. And Satya Nadella in the presentation yesterday did a similar thing. He used Andrej Karpathy's comments about Copilot, GitHub Copilot, as a sort of inspiration. And I think he's onto something here. My point here is the following. I'm trying to be concise. The whole concept of GPT and transformer language models is capturing Silicon Valley. And what I mean with Silicon Valley is sort of the spirit of the tech industry. It's not just the geographic part of Silicon Valley. It's capturing Silicon Valley in a storm. And it's because it's exciting. People can see the potential. And the question for us investors is, how are we going to make money? And the way we make money as investors is always the same way, which is happy customers are always right. In other words, let's look for the happy customers and then follow the happy customers. And that's, we believe there is a chance here that we are at the cusp of a massive wealth creation that Microsoft could be driving as an AI-driven software development platform. What we see as a potential is GitHub Copilot as a platform to iterate around language models as software technology that can help developers get better at developing software. So it's two things here. One is the fact that you are in a very large market, which is software development, and second, that you can iterate fast. The Mount, there is a presentation that came out today by Andreessen Horowitz, which is, okay, who's going to make money in this whole GPT stuff? And they're going through this whole, sort of a business school study, if you will, and whatever. But my point here is, it's an interesting question. And the answer is, where's the Mount? Where's the defensibility? The Mount is always going to be around the customer. Who is the happy customer? And if you have more of them and you can build on them, you're going to create wealth. Because wealth creation is equivalent to customer value creation. It's the same thing. Creating customer value and creating wealth is the same thing. It's just two sides of the same coin. Or in other words, the investors that put money on the line to actually make products and services happen within companies. And those companies then are creating value for customers. That's how wealth is created. So wealth creation and customer value are the same coin, two sides of the same coin. This is what we're trying to say here. I think it's very important because we've been thinking about this pretty deeply. Okay, what does this mean? It means something. This GPT transformer language models that are capturing Silicon Valley, they mean something. And they're probably, like many other innovations, they are maybe things like Excel or Word or databases. They are very useful for everybody. And the question for us then is, okay, how do we make money here? And we make money by finding the happy customers. Happy customers are the signpost that helps you find the wealth creation. And Karpathy said it. He said, I'd pay for this. Even though it's free, I'd pay for it if I had to. This is how good GitHub Copilot is. And this is just the beginning. Again, this is a quote by Karpathy. GitHub Copilot is the autopilot of software development, and autopilot being the autopilot of Tesla. He said it's lane keeping right now, but it's going to improve very fast. And we believe that this is sort of he's kicking off a thought process, an idea process we think that's going to capture Wall Street also. And Microsoft is the vehicle to invest in, to create wealth with language models. This is the Nothing Wrong podcast. It's February 8th, 2023. This is Crimdelco. For the day, the fund is up 2.8%. The market's down 1.1%. We are up 67.2%. The market is up 7.1%. We're outperforming by 60.1%. The outperformance comes from Tesla. We're going to talk about Tesla in the context of language models, but let's jump right into it. So like I said in the prelude, Microsoft had an AI event, and this AI event was pretty important. I think it's a pivotal event in the history of software development. It's coming from Microsoft. Microsoft is the largest software company in the world still, particularly when it comes to software being sold as a tool and service and platform to other companies. There are other software companies such as Google that use software to develop products and services on top of that. But Microsoft is still the software shop number one when it comes to selling software services to other companies. And they are at the cusp, in my opinion, of revolutionizing software development with GitHub and the GitHub Copilot. Now, what do I mean with that? Let's lean back a little bit and talk about language models. Language models have been developed in the last couple of years, and there's something called transformers, which are pre-trained models. And what they do is they go through lots of bodies of text, and they find relationships between tokens. And a token could be a letter, a word, a sentence, a paragraph. So that's up to the software and algorithm designers. But the concept is always the same, which is you tokenize a certain body of language, and then you find relationships between those tokens. And the way you find those relationships is by creating, and this is now the crux of the model, you're creating two vectors, a key vector and a query vector. So you have a key vector and a query vector, and then you run those vectors against a body of text, and you hopefully find relationships. And the way you do that is by calculating massive amounts of dot product between matrices. Now, again, this is not the forum here to become technical. I just want to bring home two things. One, this is linear algebra applied to a very specific problem. And that, of course, opens up the question, okay, who's going to profit from this on the hardware side? And NVIDIA is one of the main beneficiaries of that, and that's why NVIDIA shares are up. We believe that the main beneficiary always has to be around where's the happy customer. And the happy customer is much, much closer to Microsoft than to NVIDIA. We're not saying NVIDIA is not a good investment or anything like that. All we're saying is that Microsoft seems to be the right place to be, because here's why. So you have this massive language models that are pre-trained. So now you have pre-trained your models. You have run massive amounts of linear algebra calculations from tokens to text and back and forth, and you found relationships that say something like, if this word appears in a text, it's very likely then another word will follow. If the word swim appears in a text, then the word wetsuit or surf is very likely to follow in that same text. If in a sentence, President Obama was the first black president, could be followed by the United States is opening up its formerly relatively conservative way in politics. So sentences like this could be related. So that's what these models do. And the power of these models is that with a prompt, meaning with a short prompt, maybe just a sentence or a word, it can give you pretty interesting results. So if I now put into this model, let's say the word, okay, what is the best coffee shop in Palo Alto? It will then be able to predict the answer or generate a result. That's what generative search is all about. It generates the result. And now let me talk a little bit about search, what Satya Nadella was talking about. So we have the concept of search, which has been pretty well developed by Google and others, which is you look at the web, you crawl the web, you index the web algorithmically, and then you deliver search results in form of links, mainly links. And what Google has been doing recently is also summarize the search results. So take some of the links that it finds, the top links maybe, and then take certain parts of the of the let's say documents that it puts on top as a link and then highlights them and then summarizes it for you. So we're still talking about finding links, finding existing documents on the web and presenting it to you as a searcher. What Microsoft is attempting to do with ChatGPT and those sort of models is Microsoft is looking at generating the answer for you. So not even looking at the links anymore, just saying, look, according to your search, this is what I think you should do. You should go to Verve at Palo Alto. That's the best coffee, in my opinion, based on X, Y, and Z. And if you want more links, here are the links. So it's not fundamentally different in the sense that it's still using what's in the web. That's not new. However, what is new here is that it's generative and it's interactive. So you can ask questions. You can say, well, I don't like Verve because I had a bad experience in Santa Cruz. Do you have an alternative? And then it might answer you, sorry, you had a bad experience. We've seen other people have had a bad experience in Santa Cruz, but here in Palo Alto, actually, the coffee is much better. So you might want to try this coffee here. Iterative. But I don't want to dwell too much on search here. Search is obviously a huge opportunity, and we had, interestingly enough, Google was down 8% today. I don't think Google has had such a big move other than on an earnings call ever, as far as I'm concerned, maybe in the early days. So when a company like Google, with the kind of market cap that Google has, moves 8% because of a presentation, I think you have to listen. So this is just a small tangent here, an indicator that we're not just coming up with fantasy here. The market is on our side. But I think here's something that we think we have a better insight than the market. The market's focused on search because that's the big opportunity here. And yes, it is. However, what we're interested in at Orange Capital Partners is always iteration, cost of error correction. We've spoken about this many times. Go back to probably every 10 podcasts on average, you will find at least a part of the podcast will be about this. So what we're looking for is not necessarily, oh, this is a new market search and blah, blah, blah. What we're looking for is, okay, where can Microsoft actually iterate rapidly without making terrible mistakes or costly mistakes and correct those errors and keep improving? And the answer is GitHub Copilot. This is why this is so important. Okay, we think that Microsoft has a platform called GitHub with apparently 100 million users, whatever that means, probably 100 million, but if you really boil it down, it's probably only 1 million really power users, but doesn't matter. It's more than one, and it's certainly a large number. So this acquisition of GitHub could turn out to be a real big moneymaker for Microsoft, not because of GitHub per se, but because they have now a platform where they can iterate fast. You can make a similar argument with LinkedIn, but that's a different conversation that we might touch upon in this episode. But let's stay with GitHub Copilot now. Again, GitHub Copilot is a platform which helps people develop software. That's what GitHub has been since the beginning. It's a open source platform for software. In other words, if two people are in different parts of the world and they want to work on the same problem, GitHub has solved that particular problem by giving them a platform where they can iterate around software. There is these things called the history of the I don't know the exact buzzwords, but let's say if you change something, it keeps track of who changed what and how it was before and what the benefits are and so on and so forth. Now, what GitHub Copilot does, it helps you write software. And Karpati says, look, it's just the beginning, right? This is lane keeping for autopilot in Tesla. This is the analogy that he's using. And as a customer of Tesla, I know exactly what he's talking about. Lane keeping is a fantastic tool. It's not changing the world yet, but for me as a customer, as a driver, I would hate to give it up. And I would pay for it now, for sure. And by the way, just on a tangent, I think if Tesla found a more soothier, I don't know if that's a word, or if Tesla could soothe customers into using more FSD and then paying maybe a little bit and getting them used to it, I think the adoption would be much higher. But let's put that aside. The reason I'm saying that is when I'm driving, when I'm using autopilot, and then sometimes it kicks me out on the highway because I haven't paid attention. It's really painful to then keep driving, and then I usually stop, actually put the car in P and then put it back, because then it comes back. In other words, it is really useful. I'm a happy customer, and I'd pay for it if it wasn't free. And that's a key sentence that Karpati said. Now, Karpati as a person, I think, is the sort of, I don't know, impersonation of our argument, happy customers are always right. He said that actually on the Friedman podcast, where he spoke about the autopilot and how Tesla is approaching the autopilot as an iteration between customers and the company. And now he's using the same analogy for GitHub Autopilot. I think this is where the light bulb went on. This is where this is fantastic. So the opportunity for Microsoft is in GitHub Autopilot, because that's where they can iterate fast and make mistakes and rapidly improve their generative language models to the point where they can use it for software development. And that as a whole, of course, is a massive market. Satya Nadella's words are that pretty much every company today is a software company. Everybody just wants software developers. That's where the shortage is. That's where the problem is. How can I'm Wells Fargo? How can I faster iterate my software development stack? Volkswagen. How can I iterate faster? Everybody has that same problem, particularly the companies that are being disrupted, such as the car companies. Now, this can be, of course, translated to the search business. Absolutely, it can, and we see lots of opportunity there. But we don't want to get too general here, because then we fall back into this, well, okay, is it really defensible? Well, Google could do the same thing, so on and so forth. And we believe, yes, I mean, it's defensible, because you have real-time access to models, and you're faster, and you're maybe a few months ahead, and that can already get you critical mass and adoption. So all those things are certainly important, and we don't want to dismiss them. But the one thing where we're sure, the one thing where we're happy to put our money on the line, is the fact that they have GitHub Copilot, and that it's something they already have, that's something that people want to use, something that is useful for customers, that people would even pay for, and also something, by the way, that Microsoft as a company can charge for, because the business model of Microsoft for the last 20 years at least, maybe has been, look, we're not really a monopolist anymore, but we're going to throw in, Microsoft Teams. We're going to throw in Microsoft Messaging and Microsoft this and that. And you charge a little bit more, but you're already a customer. You're already buying lots of licenses from us. You might as well buy a few bucks more for this and that, and so on and so forth. And as a customer, if you're the IT, head at Merrill Lynch, you're not going to question too much. It's from Microsoft. Nobody's going to fire you for using Microsoft. So why don't you just, instead of using the startup XYZ, that is doing the same thing, maybe that they're doing some sort of Copilot technology for GitHub or GitLab or whatever, just use Microsoft, okay? So what I'm saying here is that, yeah, you could have the Slack of Copilot software development technology, the Slack or the Dropbox or the Zoom, and all these companies, these vertical startups that came up with something that, quite frankly, Microsoft can do the same way, and usually Microsoft is the one crushing them. And we believe that as an investor, we're much better off at Microsoft. So to summarize, this presentation that Microsoft gave on February 7th, I think it's a pivotal day in the history of software development, because it is the manifestation of an idea that's been lingering around, but now it's been put in physical form. It's been said, it's been written down, it's been executed, and the light bulb has gone on in our view, and I'm sure it's going to start going on in many of investors' view. We believe we're early on this. There's maybe also not even a rush to invest now. That's not the point. We'll talk about positioning a bit later, but what's really important here is that Microsoft is very well positioned to take advantage of language model transformers such as GPT, because they have GitHub and GitHub Copilot, and they can iterate fast around people actually using these language models for generative search, for suggestive search, for interactive chat-based Copilot technology. We call this Copilot technology because it can be applied to software development as much as, let's say, just search, or even, let's say, the autopilot at Tesla actually could use Copilot technology, where the Copilot interactively suggests better ways to drive or better ways to get from A to Z, and so on and so forth. So we believe the search for a money-making opportunity for language transformers models such as GPT is over. We've found it. It's Microsoft, because they have the ability to iterate, to learn from mistakes fast, rapidly, and not the cost of errors is not very high, and they can therefore build a moat around this. And this is where moats are really built, around customers, around happy customers, because happy customers are always right. Thank you.